Hi there, it's Paulie here. Japanese cherry wine, stunning. So look, I had a viewer request, and yes, it lit up my world, because this is for a set of rules that I used to play way back in the day, and oh my god, I remember them, so I got them, and you know, we've been doing it again. Sterling stuff. Fletcher Pratt's Naval Wargame. Now, this is an absolutely core piece of wargaming lore, if you've never heard of it. This thing was the most popular wargame in history, bar none. Truly, really was. This was played everywhere. So, very early days. So we've had, like H.G. Wells has done Little Wars, which is essentially a floor game. Model soldiers, spring-loaded cannon, and all this sort of stuff. And for men, boys, and the more intelligent sort of girl that likes reading boys' books. But Fletcher Pratt, now this gentleman, he did a naval war game, and this thing, he was actually writing it sort of in the late 20s, and early versions of this played around about 1927. However, this thing really came to its own in the 30s and was really, really popular. There was a big club that used to play it in New York, but lots of people would come and play this thing, and there were many, many, many clubs which spread out around both, you know, first America and then the world. A lot of naval people used to play this, and a lot of the naval colleges and so on, when they would come into towns where there were clubs, you know, they would come and they would play this. Now, luminaries who played this, there's some great photos in these books. When you have a look at who's actually playing in this internal club, there's Fletcher Pratt, who was like, he was an author in his own right, but one of the main umpires you'll see, L Sprague de Camp, a name you might remember. And so that's L Sprague de Camp, he's the umpire, or this one here in fact, on the apartment floor. You'll have Isaac Asimov is crouched down over his cruiser, doing some measurements, and yes, he's beating the living snot out of L. Ron Hubbard, which is a sacred thing, and there should have been way more of it. But so yeah, all these luminaries played it, but this game was very, very popular with women. Lots of women played it. They were absolutely welcomed and loved in these clubs. A huge percentage of these are female players. And in fact, they're saying the female players were actually some of the best and absolutely ruthless, and they were beating the living daylights out of actual admirals, much to those admirals' annoyance. And they did it for a reason. This was played all through World War II, by the way, and at places like Henderson Field and Guadalcanal, as naval officers and so on come on board and marine pilots land, the first thing they did was they set up in a tent, they set up a games club for playing this. So anyway, how the game is played, it's really rather interesting. There's a formula for making a points cost for ships. This comes off its tonnage, this comes off its armour, it comes off the guns and so on that it's got, and it's other equipment, like if it's got spotter planes and if it's got radar and these sorts of things, and what its speed is. So you'll have a points cost for these vessels. Now, as a ship takes damage, it actually whittles away its points value. There are set levels as it goes down that it reduces its function as a ship as it takes a percentage of its points value. So yeah, bigger and more expensive it is, the more damage it absorbs. Fantastic. But the core of this game is essentially guessing range. It's played with quite large ships, 1/1200th scale, so you know, like a battleship's about that long, by about that wide. These things chortle along the ground. It's played on a floor. Maneuvering, essentially, you can make a 90-degree turn at the start of each turn. You can just pivot this thing from the stern and just turn. Because they found that battleships like the Yamato can actually turn around 180 degrees in about 800 yards kind of the same range as most cruisers and so on. So these were oddly manoeuvrable vessels. So what the hell? They just said, we're not that interested in the minuate of turning circles. More wildly manoeuvrable things like destroyers can do a second turn. Your speed in knots gives you a speed in inches that you will move on the ground. But then we get to the firing. For firing, what you do is you have an arrow that's got a pair of pins on it. So what you do is you take this arrow and you place it next to your ship, and you aim it at a target ship. And what you do then is you write down the range at which your guns are going to fire. So you have to guess the range to the target. If you've got multiple cannon firing, like you've got double and triple turrets, or multiple mounts, these will be staggered. So 2 shells will be at where you aimed, and the others will go like an inch over an inch under, an inch over an inch under, an inch. So you get a spread. So you get a fair kind of broad guess if you've got like a battleship that's got 4 turrets with 3 guns, all right? So you got like a 10-inch spread, not too bad. So you write down these things. Now what they then said is they would make all of the players basically step back or leave, and then umpires would run out and they would actually measure it. And then, quite charmingly, they would take golf tees, which are white and of course broad at the base, and go, and that made their impromptu kind of splash markers. So they had red ones for hits and white ones for splashes. So you'd come back in and you could see, like you've got like white splashes, a couple of inches short or whatever, and you haven't hit him, or a couple of reds on him, and lots of white splashes, so you're getting the range, and the ones that have hit, the damage is then adjudicated. There are rules in this for torpedoes. The torpedoes basically fire as pretty much like a line that travels at a set speed along the floor, and if a ship's path crosses over the torpedo's path during the turn, then you get a hit. They have aircraft rules in this, where essentially you are guessing both the height and the distance to the incoming aircraft, because this is for the big guns, paf. So everything was done off this guesstimation. There's no dice rolling in this. They were adamant about it. It's not a trivial game where one rolls dice. This was seen as poo-poo, yuck, no, ugh. They're not doing that at all. It's completely different from modern gaming. And they say they tried these, and no, it was just like playing, some sort of poker dice or something. So they kept this guesstimation. It sounds odd. This is a really playable game, and it's hilarious because your own skill comes in. Now, by the way, this is why so many female players were just the ruthless lords of the sea. Admirals would come in with their staff and play, and apparently the top players in the world were a bunch of New York female fashion designers and fashion artists who were just so skilled at telling distances at a glance, because that was their job, that they would just essentially get you every time. And it was, and so they would give them a handicap, and these admirals were, women getting handicaps against us? And it's like, oh yeah, no, you'll need it. They're ruthless. They're ruthless, old son. So convoys going back and forth in Britain and so on, to Britain and New York or whatever, there were clubs at either end, so you'd actually be in the naval war, jump out of the other end, play your war game with the local clubs, get back on your ships, be in the naval war, or jump out the other side. They were playing this in the Pacific theatres. They'd played this in Fremantle, here in Perth, including Dutch members, because the Dutch Navy was all based here. There were Dutch players. There's photos down at the Naval Museum. Wonderful. Why did this game die out if it was so popular? Well, when you read this book here, does have a lot of historical stuff in there. There's a lot of players and so on have written their memoirs in it. World War II killed it. Not because it killed off players and so on. In fact, many of the players actually had gotten so much of a grasp of naval tactics on this that they went on and became captains and vice admirals and so forth. And L. Ron Hubbard. Drink. But what happened was there was such an economic boom, particularly in the USA after World War II, that these people all sort of scattered to the winds as they suddenly began to live, really, really prosperous lives. So, as they were saying, look, our core New York group, these fashion designers, a lot of them suddenly were whisked off to Hollywood, where they became the main designers for Hollywood movies. And someone else went off and he started a whole business, running meatpacking, and someone else sort of they got sent off to Japan. There is a little story when Japan surrenders. The first thing everyone does is they all go into the Imperial Diet Building, which is the Parliament building, which is empty. So, floor space. And we've got Australian and British and American and Dutch and French naval officers, and there's lots of press people who are also players, and lots of other people. So the first thing that's done is giant game. Yes, until someone pointed out that this was a little bit diplomatically tacky to be playing giant war games in the middle of the Japanese Parliament, while Tokyo's still smouldering around you. But yes, they essentially, prosperity kind of scattered the group to the wind, even though it had stayed together so well during the war. So it kind of withered out and became almost a legend. Still played now and then, here and there, but its dominance as this amazing thing just vanished. But it is here. It's still out there. It's still a very, very playable game. Look, its only drawback is floor space. There's a couple of different scales of this. There was a later version of this published by good old Donald Featherstone, and he published a shortened scale version of this that can be played like on a largish table, like a big ping pong table or something. Or there's original version, which you'll need a floor. You'll need a scout hall, you'll need a dining room, you'll need something fairly big. But this game, it's easy to teach. It's immensely good fun to play. It's an absolute riot. Really ornamental kind of game to play at something like a big games convention. This would be a fantastic feature game at a games convention, because again, you can explain how it's played in seconds flat, and the fun is in the playing. And I think that's why this thing survived for all those decades. It is jolly good fun. Look, you can get this up on Lulu. Give it a look. If you're a serious figure gamer, or a particularly naval gamer, but a serious figure gamer, this is a historical document you should have. I just found the photos of all these science fiction greats just in there playing this thing amazing. It's like, holy crap, that's Isaac Asimov. Like here they all are, just all like, whoop, standing around. And yeah, I think this is a must for your library. Go out and find it, and why don't you grab some friends and give it a whirl? All right, cheers everybody. If you like the videos, yay, like and subscribe. Cheers.